Hello, here I come. Thanks for being with me today. Today's show is a little bit serious. Hopefully you can handle it. I have a friend who went to Tunica, Mississippi to gamble, and she was telling me all about it, and she said, I won $700. And her husband said, you lost $2,000. And she said, I won $700. And he was grieved. But what can you say? Nobody's going to believe it. So I'm going to give you some stats that might help you with that if you think this is actually a good deal. First of all, if you don't own the establishment or on the take because you helped get it through politically to get the casino put in, it's a losing proposition. Gambling is a losing proposition. If you can't look at the incredible wealth that's involved in building these places and figure out where the money's going, you're in trouble, and you're not probably smart enough to beat the house. But then nobody is. Losing proposition. So here's some stats for you before we talk about what the Founding Fathers had to say and how gambling was affecting society 200 years ago. The suicide rate among those who gamble regularly, higher than for any other behavior group. They experience mood disorders, 3 times higher than those who aren't regular gamblers, and they have high rates of depression. Rates of physical and sexual abuse, 16 times higher. Conflict with family and friends is more frequent. Incidents of financial, legal, and work-related problems much higher. Gambling is the fastest growing cause of bankruptcy. The arrest rate is 3 to 5 times higher, depending on where you live. The divorce rate 2 to 3 times higher. Regional statistics further validate these national results. 40-fold increase in gambling-related bankruptcies in Metro Detroit within 18 months after casinos opened in the area. Both felony crimes and child abuse rose 40%, and domestic violence and assaults rose 80%. After casinos opened in Deadwood, South Dakota. Suicides increased by 213% after casinos opened in Gulfport, Mississippi, and they rose by 1,000% after casinos opened in Biloxi. And there's a lot more statistics. That should get you going there. So when somebody comes up to me like this kid and says, hey, sign off on this, we're going to get casinos here, and all the money's going to go to the students in the schools, and I went, no, I'm not buying that one. Okay, so those are some pretty telling statistics. And we'll come back to a little bit more of that. But I want to tell you what George Washington said. He was talking to his nephew, and he said, avoid gaming. This is a vice which is productive of every possible evil. Equally injurious to the morals and health of its votaries or its followers. It is the child of avarice, the brother of inequity, and father of mischief. It has been the ruin of many worthy families, the loss of many a man's honor, and the cause of suicide. Nothing's changing there. In a word, few gain by this abominable practice, while thousands are injured. And then he told George Washington again, he told his brother, there are 2 very dangerous vices against which I most particularly caution you, gaming and drinking. The incitement to the first is the hope of gain. Now, how many men have made fortunes by gaming? Or have any? And how many have been ruined by it? Millions. God forbid any friend of mine should add to the number. I would point at a gaming house as a place of utter destruction. George Washington. Benjamin Franklin always has something to say. He said I was talking about a popular get-rich-quick scheme in his day, and it was not actually gambling, it was digging for treasure. And he said, it's the same mentality though. He says, men otherwise of very good sense have been drawn into this practice through an overweening desire of sudden wealth, and an easy credulity or a naivete and gullibility of what they so earnestly wish might be true, while the rational and almost certain methods of acquiring riches and industry by industry and frugality are neglected or forgotten. There seems to be some peculiar charm in the conceit, the self-flattering confidence of finding money, or gambling, getting rich for nothing. So there are a lot of scriptures about this, and that's what it always comes back to, really. Proverbs 28:20 says, "He who makes haste to be rich will not go unpunished." And we're not to covet. And then Proverbs 20:21 says, "An inheritance gained hurriedly at the beginning will not be blessed in the end." And then this is a scripture that I think we should really pay attention to. We've heard it so much that sometimes it just goes over our head. But really listen and focus on this. 1 Timothy 6:9-10. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. "But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil, and some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." That's what this boils down to. I don't have faith in God. I don't have faith in His promises and His way of doing things. I'm going to disobey and do it my way, and it's a form of pride, and it never works out. Okay, Thomas Jefferson, always a wonderful person to listen to. But before that, I want to give you a stat about this. Numerous negative societal effects of gambling are easily seen and documented. It's therefore not surprising that for every dollar a government takes in from gambling, it spends $1.90 in dealing with its consequences. I want to submit to you that you can't measure those consequences. There are a lot more than just $1 consequences, and there's a lot of consequences that go under the radar. So the $1.90 is just the ones that are come to the notice, through an arrest or a suicide or whatever, what are so many myriad things. But it's going to be more than that. Overall, the ratio is 3-to-1 when combining both public and private effects. So, if governments are really interested in saving money, reducing spending, balancing state budgets, it should eliminate gambling and lotteries. For government spends twice as much on gambling consequences as is brought into its coffers by gambling revenues. And then Thomas Jefferson, this is nothing new. In 1779, he actually introduced a state law stipulating any person who shall bet or play for money or other goods, or who shall bet on the hands or sides of those who play at any game in a tavern, race field, or other place of public resort, shall not be eligible to any office of trust or honor within this state. He understood that people that saw nothing wrong with gambling were not to be trusted with state money. And the same is true today. If a legislator doesn't see any problem with gambling, he's not going to see any problem with paying twice as much on expenses as is received in the income. And he is clearly incompetent to hold, as Jefferson put it, any office of trust or honor within the state. All right. One last thing before I talk about a different kind of gambling. Besides this duty of being careful and industrious, this from Reverend William Stith, delivered a sermon delivered to the Virginia legislature in 1751 at its request, because there was so many problems with this. He says, besides this duty of being careful and industrious in providing for our families, that is not how you provide for your family, is going off gambling. I have a friend whose mother gambled away. Her dad had a very large and very, very profitable cement business, and she gambled away everything. They lost everything. She would not stop. Could not stop. We are still further obliged to be watchful over their manners and behavior, our children, to set them a good example, to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, Ephesians 6:4. And this is a branch of parental duty, equal if not superior to the other. But how does the gamester comply with this particular? So, enough said about that. Now I want to talk about another kind of gambling, which is when you give a small child a device and you don't know what they're getting on there. You can't sit over their shoulder and watch everything. And you're gambling that porn won't find them. I read recently a young boy said, porn will find you. You don't have to go looking for it. You put that in your hand and you're gambling that anti-parental messages won't come in their minds. You're gambling that all kinds of things that can destroy their psyche and steal their childhood won't come before them. What a gamble. What a really, really dumb gamble. Like I said, I might make you mad today, but you were never called to let a device with every message from all over the world, no telling what, take the place of your parenting. Thanks for being with me. As I said, tomorrow's show will be more fun.